It is my privilege this evening to welcome here Professor David Newman, who will give us an expert assessment of the David Hillman stained glass windows and the Anglo-Jewish Rabbinate in the 20th century. The presence of Rabbi Isaac Halevy Herzog, who will speak immediately before the lecturer, is no accident. Because David Hillman's father, Diane Hillman of the London Beth Din, was the brother-in-law of Israel's Chief Rabbi of Isaac Halevy Herzog. The Hillmans and the Herzogs were combative religious Zionists, and I well recall how Rabbi Herzog Jackson ripping a copy of the 1939 white paper on the steps of the Great Synagogue. I wasn't there myself. Was symbolically repeated. According to the authorities, you may be right. I'm depending on the previous word. Anyhow, he lifted on the steps of a Jerusalem synagogue, and the act was symbolically repeated by his son Chaim Herzog when, as Israel's ambassador to the UN, he tore up a copy of his Zionism and Racism resolution 36 years later in the UN General Assembly. Right. Now, just a few words about our speaker. Pardon me. David Newman, OBE, is a British-trained Israeli scholar of political geography and geopolitics, as a professor at the Ben Gurion University Department of Politics and Government, and is editor of an academic journal. He has served as Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the BU. Born in London, he holds degrees from Queen Mary College, a PhD from the University of Durham, immigrated in Israel in 1982, following which he was appointed as lecturer in Tel Aviv University Department of Geography. In 1987, he became a senior lecturer in the Department of Geography at Newman University, and from 1996 to 1998, he served as director of its Hubert Humphrey Institute for Social Research. In 1988, he founded the Ben Gurion University Department of Politics and Government and served as its first chairperson until 2003. In that year, he facilitated the founding of the BBU Center for the Study of European Politics and Society, with which he is affiliated. It's my great pleasure to welcome Professor Newman.
Thank you. I promise no quality, but it's wonderful to see a bunch of English speakers who are still interested in something else than on a regular day today. So it's a great pleasure for me being here. Actually, it all stems from our faraway relative, Professor Newman. And so he brought a bunch of our family relatives to this lecture, including Shmuel and Yudit Ben-Tovim. Shmuel was our economic minister in the embassy in London, and that comes from the wife of David Hillman. So how are we all connected? I'm also happy my son Noam is here, and we'll have some of our cousins later on. So first of all the angles, this came out this month. It's called The Rabbinate in Stormy Days. It is the official biography of Rabbi Isaac Halevy Herzog, Geffen Publishing in Jerusalem. I'm not marketing, I don't have royalties in the book, but for all of you who want to really understand this illustrious, great rabbinic and national figure, Rabbi Herzog, it's all here. And why is it all connected? This building, Hechal Shlomo, was built in his honor as the original official home of the Chief Rabbinate, donated by Sir Isaac Wolfson, another great British philanthropist whose family has been connected with our family for ages. David Hillman is the brother of our grandmother, Sarah Hillman, Sarah Herzog. She was called the Rebbetzin. People may recall that we would come to Kiddush every Shabbat to her home in Ibn Ezra following the death of my grandfather in 69. She passed away in 79. And she founded and led the great institution in the entrance to town called the Hechal Shlomo, which is bearing her name, the Sarah Herzog Hospital. And she founded the Emunah, and the Mizrahi women, and the Emunah orphanage homes, and I was lucky as Minister of Welfare to visit each and every one of the Sarah Herzog institutions. So she was the sister of David Hillman. And who was David Hillman? When my dad would always say David Hillman is registered as an official royal portrait artist in the Royal Gallery. He was a great artist. The windows you can't see, but you can see this window because there's light from the outside, and you see how rich it is. And David will tell you about his synagogues all over England and in Israel. He had developed a special technique, but he was first and foremost a yeshiva bocher who basically, if one can say so, rebelled and didn't assume upon himself rabbinic lineage, but rather went to art. And this was a source of great rift between him and his parents, though he was a very devout Jew. And David will, so I'm sure, will pick upon it, but I will just say two things about the stories about David Hillman and my recollection of David Hillman as a young boy. The two stories are that, and Professor Newman will depict on it. So there was a big rift between him and his father. Rabbi Isaac Halevy was a huge sage, and was upbacked in London, and later on founded the Yeshiva here, Oil Torah. But towards the end of his life, Rabbi Isaac Halevy apologized or asked for forgiveness from his son for objecting to him being such a great artist. And secondly, my father would tell us, my father used to live at the Hillman home in the beginning of World War II, in the Blitz, and then he volunteered to the British, from civil protection until he joined the British Army and went to war. During that time, he lived in David and Annie's home, and Annie is the aunt of all these cousins of mine. And he would listen to operas with a gramophone. And that's how my father developed huge affection and love for operas. I always wondered how come a yeshiva boy from Yeshivat Hebron would be attracted to operas. Now I understand it came from David Hillman. I remember David Hillman as a young boy. You would tell him a word from the Bible, any word, and he would read out to you orally the whole chapter in the Bible. He would know the Bible by heart. And it was just amazing to us. We would tell him, Dot David, some sentence from Michal, from Shmuel, whatever, he would go on and on. So this just tells you what a unique character he was, something that epitomizes our family story of being family that enjoys and works in all worlds which God has given us to enjoy and learn and study. I wish you all a wonderful evening. I'm running to an official event of Sefer Torah in Talpiot, but I'm sure David will have a wonderful lecture. I will listen to the beginning and then I'll. Toda Rabba. That's for you if you want.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you very much, Rabbi Isaac Herzog, what I want to do tonight is I want to talk around David Hillman's windows. Anyone who knows me, I'm not an expert in art or in Jewish art. There's some people here who are, but I've become greatly interested in this lately while I'm spending much of my time this year on Shabbaton and sabbatical in London. And what I think first of all I should say, why have I developed an interest in the David Hillman windows? As Rabbi Isaac Herzog explained, in a sense we're both related to him from different directions. Rebbe Herzog was David Hillman's sister. David Hillman's wife was my great aunt. In other words, my grandmother was the older sister of Annie Hillman. And actually the first section of what I'm going to say tonight is I'm going to actually go over this family connection, this family structure, because it's as much a lecture about the interesting story of some of the Anglo-Jewish Rabbinate as it is about the windows themselves, and how and why they got to certain places such as here and not to other places. Obviously, as a small kid, you're not really interested in these things. It's very rare. But of course, as many, if not most of the people here are ex-Brits, you all remember the tradition that on Sunday afternoon you go to your aunts and uncles for Sunday afternoon tea. And of course, as kids, you hated it. You had to be schlepped along. But we always schlepped along on the Sunday afternoon to the various rabbinoites. And every so often, we would go to David Hillman's house in Priory Road, St John's Wood, which is right 2 minutes away from where I have a small flat today when I'm on sabbatical in London. And I vaguely remember my sister, who I was hoping to be here tonight, she could fill me in on it, who was a few years older than me, remembers much better than when we went there, he used to take us upstairs to his studio, where he always used to have one person working for him. In the family, we used to call it the slave. And that was where he literally, by himself, with one helper, put these windows together. And as we go on tonight, we'll understand this is not just one short of 10 windows. There are hundreds of these windows. St John's Wood alone, there are 110 David Hillman windows. And most of it he did by himself, although the last few windows at St John's Wood were actually finished after he passed away. And I'll come to those towards the end. But at that time, I didn't have a great deal of interest in it. When I came on Aliyah in 1982, I lived in the best location I've ever lived in Israel in the last 35 years. 5 minutes down the road from here in Rehov Makol. Couldn't be Talbia, poor, penniless student, on there living in Rehov Makol in Talbia. But the reason was because my grandmother, the oldest of the rabbinoites, had many years prior to that, purchased a small flat there, but she always lived in England. She purchased a flat there next to her brother's flat, Louis Rabinowitz, and I was his neighbour for the last 2 years of his life, and I'll say something about him later on. And I also had other cousins living here in Rehov Smolensky, in the house next to the Prime Minister's house, who were from the Newman side of the family, but they were all connected. You know, they'd come in the 50s, not in the 80s, so everybody was connected with each other and knew each other. And I used to come with these family known as the Eliavs. The mother was actually a Newman from Leeds, with the Eliavs, and they used to dump them here in the second row, right behind Rabbi Isaac Herzog in the second row here. This was then a very Israeli minyan. They hadn't yet built the massive shul, it was just being built. And this was a very interesting shul to come to in the 80s. In this seat here sat Yosef Ford, and Shopet Bazak sat in the row behind. As a young person just come to this was a very important part of socialization to come to this synagogue. I used to sit with my second cousin, David Eliyahu, who both named after the same David Gershon Nachmanovich Newman, who's buried in the Hilltop Cemetery in Leeds. And David said to me, he said, you know, these are Hillman windows. I said, what? What do you mean? And he actually got me into the story of the Hillman window. So it's actually this shul that really developed an adult interest of mine in the Hillman windows. And then because I travel a great deal back to London, and this is the second time I've spent a long Shabbaton period with a small flat that's in St John's Wood. Any of you know, if you go to St John's Wood, and we'll see pictures of it later, there are a huge number of Hillman windows, over 100 there. For an Israeli going to the St John's Wood Synagogue on a Shabbat morning, there are pros and cons. The cons are that it takes 3 hours for the service. With a chazan, actually the chazan today is the junior chazan of Hechal Shlomo, a young chassid called Avraham Kirschenbaum, who comes once every 3 weeks. But it goes on for nearly 3 hours, a bit much for someone used to Israeli services. But there are 2 pros. One is, St John's Wood has the mother of all Kiddushin. In every second or third week it's catered by Tony Page. And you don't need to eat for the rest of the week after one of those. The other reason is because when I get bored, I'm known for walking along the sides and examining the Hillman windows. So and particularly on the right side of the synagogue, I know them better than on the left side. So I've developed this interest, and I've decided that during my sabbatical, when obviously I'm affiliated with King's College and I'm working on the work to do with my own work in geopolitics, I allow myself plenty of time to go around the synagogues, to sit in the British Library and look up the Jewish history, to talk to the Rabbanim in England, and to learn more and more about Hillman the personality and Hillman the windows. And what I'd like to do over the next, say, 40 minutes or so, is that about right? Is to take you for a walk, a non-professional walk, through David Hillman, the person, the family, the windows, and obviously leave a lot of question marks open. And I have no doubt, looking around at this audience, there are going to be people who say, you forgot this window. Or did you know that such and such happened? I'm waiting for the stories to come at the end. I'm going to divide what I say into three parts. I'm going to look a bit at the family and the structure, which was already mentioned by Rabbi Isaac Herzog. I'm going to just do a brief overview of where the windows are around the world, and then take you for a very brief course through some of his common themes. As I said, it would have been, as we said, it would have been nice. It was my idea to have it here in the shul. I said, let's have it here against the backdrop of his windows, which was a great idea until only yesterday morning we found out that they're not lit up at night, which is a great shame. But if you go outside, immediately after the lecture, before they turn the lights off, you see them from outside with the lights, and they're really quite beautiful with the lights. So let's get moving, and let's start talking about, first of all, who was the man? This is Murphy's Law. Why aren't we working? Okay, so we're going to start with looking at the religious and the family concept. This is David Hillman as a young man. Pictures of him as a young artist. Rabbi Isaac Halevy was right when he said that his father was annoyed with him for not following the family tradition of Rabbanut, but he did actually get smicha at one stage, and very early, for 2 or 3 years, he was actually the rabbi of the Anglo-Jewish Synagogue, which is, is just on the interface between Liverpool Street and the beginning of the East End. But he didn't stay there very long, but he was very learned, and we'll see that in the content, the biblical and the quotational content of the windows itself. Anglo-Jewish Synagogue, by the way, is about the only synagogue anywhere in and around the East End which functions today. Not in the morning, not on Shabbat, but because it's right near the city. And if you go there, you have to say Kaddish, or if you want to daven mincha in the winter before you can get home, you go into Anglo-Jewish Synagogue at the back of Liverpool Street Station any day right now. At 1:30, there'll be 60, 70 people coming from all the city offices to daven mincha there. And it's very interesting, they've kept it up, and just recently I went in there, and they've discovered in the basement some of the old tablets, and they've put one up for show. It is the marble tablet of the prayer for the royal family from the 1920s. It says, "He who giveth salvation unto kings and dominion unto princes, may he bless our sovereign Lord King George, Edward the Prince of Wales." Edward, of course, who had to abdicate because they didn't want him to marry an American divorcee. How times have changed. Because in a few months' time, that's exactly what Prince Harry will do. He'll marry an American divorcee. But it's a beautiful tablet which says, His Excellency King George and Edward the Prince of Wales, and that was Edward, was it the 6th or the 8th? The 8th, sorry. And of course, as we know retrospectively, probably from a Jewish point of view, would not have been the king we would have wanted, given his connections with the Nazi regime and so on. But, sorry? Possible, so if someone wants to do that, yeah. So, here he was a young artist. I heard a story that one of the reasons that his father, Baron Shmuel Hillman, didn't like, fell out with him over the issue of his art. One, because he didn't carry on in the rabbinate, that's one. But one of the family myths, stories, true or not, we never know about these things, is because before he went into windows, when he studied art, he spent a lot of his time painting nudes. And of course that would not have got down very well in that, as you say, in that household. Rabbi Shmuel Hillman was of course a leading Lithuanian rabbinical authority from a long line of rabbis. He came to be the rabbi in Glasgow. Glasgow is an important part of this story, particularly the connection with Isaac Wolfson, where both Hillman and Wolfson grew up as young children at about the same time. He came to be the rabbi in Glasgow, and at a certain point he, I don't know how long exactly he was in Glasgow, probably just for only for 3 years, that was what, 3 or 4 years. He then was invited to be the head of the Beit Din in London. According to the stories, the chief rabbi at the time, they weren't sure whether he was a bit too Eastern European, a bit too strict. They came up to interview him because a lot of the Lithuanian rabbanim of that time were very cynical about the Anglo-Jewish Rabbinate. They didn't think they were kosher enough, they didn't think they were good enough, and they were often very critical of them. Nothing has changed in the world of religious Jewish politics until this day. But he did come to London, and for the next 30 years almost, he was a very important personality in Anglo-Jewish politics. He was the head of the London Beit Din, and when he retired, he came to live in Jerusalem before his son-in-law, Chief Rabbi Herzog, became Chief Rabbi of Israel. So you can imagine he wasn't over keen on his son's profession as an artist. He was the brother of David Hillman, was the brother of Reverend Sarah Herzog, who was the wife of Chief Rabbi Herzog. And as we heard just now, she lived for quite some time after the Chief Rabbi passed away, and she was famous for the things she had. If I'm told correctly, my great aunt, Fanny Rabinovich, was a doctor.
I know Fanny took care of me at the age of 3.
From day 3. And I now own the flat she used to live in. But so she was an important personality in her own right here in Jerusalem until she passed away. The Herzogs and the Hillmans are buried not in Har HaZeitim and not in Har HaMenachot, they're buried in Sanhedria. There's an important Bekvar of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was buried there as well, just a few years ago. So that's where the Herzogs and the Hillmans, and I think also Yaakov Herzog, I think is also buried there. He was the brother-in-law of Chief Rabbi Isaac Halevy Herzog, and I also I'm not here to do a promo for the Herzog book, but I was at the event which launches sometime now. It's a fascinating book, the English translation, and recommended certainly to everyone here. Chief Rabbi Herzog, of course, was his father, Harav Yoel Herzog, who came from Lomja, which is also where the Rabinowitzes came from at one point. Then he came to Leeds, and then to Paris, and his son, Harav Yitzhak Halevy Herzog, first became the Rav in Belfast, then moved to Dublin, where he was the rabbi through the move to independence, and was reputed to have been very friendly with the first president, Eamon de Valera, and from there, of course, he was called to become the Chief Rabbi of Israel, or of Eretz Israel, before the establishment of the State of Israel, in the mid to late 1930s, after the passing of Harav Kook, who was, of course, the first Chief Rabbi of Eretz Israel. And Harav Kook had also passed through England for a short period of time during World War I. So these were the connections: Glasgow, Leeds, Belfast, Dublin, these people. Do you know this picture?
Yeah, my father.
This, I think, is David Hillman at the back, with Annie Hillman, and there are 3 Hillman and 2 Herzog boys there, and I think the boy in the white shirt was your father, President Chaim Herzog. And so they were obviously staying together in London at some point in the 30s, before that's the Hillmans and the Herzogs, at Hillman's house in London. He was also the son-in-law of, his wife was Annie Hillman, Annie Rabinowitz, the son-in-law of Rav Yaakov Rabinovich, whose own father was a very well-known Gaon from Eastern Europe, Eliezer Simcha Rabinowitz, the Rav of Lomja, whose actually commentaries on the Yerushalmi in the last 15-20 years have been brought out by Machon Yerushalayim. His son, Rabbi Isaac Halevy Herzog, the one to the right, he came to be the Rabbi of Edinburgh at the end of the 19th century, particularly of the Yiddish-speaking Tehilot. In the middle of the First World War, he moved from Edinburgh to London, where for the rest of his life, for the last 20 years, he was the Rav of Montague Road Beis Medrash in Hackney. And I would have thought, his daughter, Annie Hillman, may have become connected originally with the Hillmans and maybe with Walton's during that first decade of the 20th century when they were all Scotsmen. They were in Glasgow, they were in Edinburgh, the Herzogs were in Dublin. So you see, they conquered the United Kingdom as these Rabbanim came to be the rabbis of these major Tehilot, which were then much larger than they are today. Most of them have died, or if not dying out, are not dying out today. Very interesting story. We also have some rabbinics here in the audience, but a very interesting story is that Rabbi Isaac Halevy Herzog was the father of 9 children, 3 sons and 6 daughters. One of those daughters was my grandmother, one was Louis Rabinowitz. 3 daughters in the 1920s and 30s. All of them studied medicine and became doctors. Forget about being from a religious Jewish family, being at all a woman studying medicine in the 20s and 30s or something. 3 women from religious Jewish families. One was Annie Hillman, David Hillman's wife. Another was a woman, Miriam or Mary Hartstone. Her son for a short while was the British chess champion, William Hartstone. And another was Fanny Rabinowitz, who we mentioned here, who came to live in Yerushalayim very shortly after the establishment of the state and was very influential in creating the nurses unit, the nurses training centre in Hadassah. Both she and Louis, I think they're the only sister and brother connection who both were awarded Yakir Yerushalayim much later in their lives for their contribution to the city. So an interesting family, I think you'll agree. Husband of Dr. Annie Hillman, who was the daughter of a Rabinowitz, so there's a connection. And brother-in-law Louis Rabinowitz, who, when I first came to live here, for the last 2 years of his life, I was his neighbour, and I used to accompany him to this shul. I used to accompany him to the Yeshurim. He took over the shul of Rabbi Arya Levine, Olea Gardon, in Nachlaot on the way to Machne Yehuda. And on Shabbat afternoon he had a little shtibel around the back corner here, where he and a Rav Goring used to daven on Shabbat afternoon. Again, a very important part of my own socialization. Any of you who remember or knew Louis Rabinowitz, whether you like his politics or dislike politics, he was a charismatic person. He grew up in London. He was the rabbi of Cricklewood. He was then the chaplain to the armed forces, became Chief Rabbi of South Africa. And he left quite at a relatively young age, in the early 60s, because he wanted to live in Yerushalayim. Some say it was because he came out rather strongly sometimes against apartheid, which wasn't something the Jewish community really wanted to be put on the desk and publicly. He came here, and for a short while he was even deputy mayor of Jerusalem. He was asked by the Likud, because he was a revisionist, he was very close to Begin. He was asked by the Likud to run as mayor, and he said he wouldn't run against Kolek. And he became for a very short while the deputy mayor of Jerusalem while living here for a while. And I thought he was also quite a character, if you could say. A short digression to say, of course, I think it's very interesting to think of all the Lithuanian rabbis that came to England in the first half of the 20th century. In addition to the ones we've just mentioned, Herzog, Hillman, Rabinowitz, and a few others, there were a number of very influential Lithuanian Gaonim and Rabbanim who came to England at that time. I've just mentioned 5 of the most prominent here. Rav Kook, of course, was there during the First World War. He wasn't there for a long time. He was caught out by the war. He was actually in Switzerland when the war broke out. Halfway through the war, they brought him to be the Rav of the Machziki Adas in Brick Lane, which is now a mosque, like so many other shuls of that area. He was the Rav at that time. There was, of course, Rav Yecheskel Abramsky, who Chief Rabbi Hertz helped bring out from Galut, from having been sent to Siberia, brought him to London, and he eventually became the Av Bet Din from around the late 30s through to his retirement in the 50s. And he too came to Jerusalem, lived in Beit Dagan, and received the Israel Prize for his amazing monumental work on the Talmud Yerushalmi, on the Chazon Peskel. He was, and my friend who I pray with in London today, Diane Winstock, who has been a Diamond Bet Din for 20 years, says when he goes through the archives and the records of the Bet Din, and you look at the influence and the impact people left on the Bet Din over a long period of time, he says Abramsky stands out as the single individual who, to this day, his impact on the Bet Din lasts until this day, many of his rulings. There was a Rav Dessler who came to England for a while. He, for a short period, took the Montague Road Beth Medrash after Rabinowitz died. He didn't like being a rabbi. And it was David Hillman, who we've spoken about, who found him the connection for a private pupil with the Sassoon family. He became the private tutor of Rav Sassoon. And then, of course, as some of you may know, he went and founded the Kollel in Gateshead. And last year of his life, he became the Mashgiach Pachonovich here in Bnei Brak. He was very much part of the Muslim movement, like the next person, Rabbi Yael Lapien, who also came from Eastern Europe. He then came in his very late, like in the 70s or 80s, he came to Israel and founded the Yeshiva in Kfar Hasidim, but many of his children remained in England and became the Rosh Yeshiva of Gateshead and other places. And of course, there was yet another Chief Rabbi of Israel, Rav Issa Yehuda Unterman, who came from Eastern Europe to be the Rabbi of Liverpool, and then was appointed as the Rav in Tel Aviv at one point, and eventually after the death of which Chief Rabbi of Rav Herzog, there was a short interregnum, he then became the next Chief Rabbi of Israel, and was the Chief Rabbi of Israel during the Six-Day War. Very interesting, Rav Kook, Rav Herzog, Rav Unterman, all originally from Eastern Europe, all took serious major positions in England, became the three first chief rabbis of Eretz Israel. There was obviously still a very strong British connection and influence in that.
Is Rabbi Sachs on his way here?
But he didn't come from Eastern Europe. Just to compare that, this is a real digression, just to compare that with how the Anglo-Jewish Orthodox Rabbinate looked at the time, that was in the 1930s. That comes from this great book, if any of you know it, The Lost Synagogues of London by Peter Renton. That picture's at the back. It's a great book, great copy book for anyone who grew up in English synagogues and London synagogues. Very few of them with beards, most of them with dogs' collars, but this was the Orthodox rabbinate. That's the point I want to make. The man with the hat, which you can't see at the far end, is my grandfather, the only one with the hat. And this was an Anglo-Jewish rabbinate in the 1950s. They didn't look a great deal of difference. The first one was the Chief Rabbi Herzog, this is the Chief Rabbi Brody. And so you can see the sort of contrast between that group of rabbis who came from Lithuania, who were very involved in the Bet Din, were partly involved in communities, some were involved in the community, some weren't. This was the context around which Hillman did his windows. He was living in the world of the 30s. His brothers-in-law, his parents-in-law were very much Lithuanian rabbinate, the very Orthodox rabbinate, that he was doing windows for English shuls. He wanted to make those windows more Jewish in their content. He felt that they were too church-like. And if you look at the stained glass windows of shuls from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, which are all Jewish windows, but they're very much like, they're very similar to many of the windows you'll find in churches. He wanted to put some very major Jewish content into his windows, and we'll look at that later. He was, as I say, a childhood friend of Isaac Wolfson. That's a very important point to make, because Isaac Wolfson not only built the Hechal Shlomo in the name of his father, I think he built about 100 shuls throughout Israel. He also rebuilt the Central Synagogue after World War II, where Hillman's windows are to be found. He was obviously a childhood acquaintance, making friends with Hillman, so he got him to do windows for his shuls. It was Wolfson who basically, because of his connection with the Herzogs and his connection with the Hillmans, who basically got him to do the windows for this shul here, this beautiful shul where the furniture is from Padua, from Italy, and the windows are from Bet Yotzei Hillman in London. Last family thing to say, this is the father of three sons. All of them were mavericks in their own right. follows very well in the tradition of Hillmans and Rabinowitzes. They were mavericks. Ellis Hillman was a professor of geology, wrote a book about underground London, for a short while was mayor of Barnet. He was actually the arts person in the Great London Council, but was kicked out by Ken Livingstone when he first came into power. Some years later became mayor of Barnet, but he was a bit of a maverick. He was founder of the Lewis Carroll Society and president of the Flat Earth Research Society. That's a man after my heart, a serious researcher. His brother Harold Newman, who passed away just a year ago, was a professor of microbiology. There was a time when he took on the whole of the microbiology profession over certain findings and the way they're published, and he argued that there was a hegemony in the profession which only favoured people who put out findings which were favourable to the pharmaceutical industry. Remember the film The Fugitive? And he had a big fight with the microbiology industry over that. And another brother, Mayor Mickey Hillman, who's still alive, living in Hampstead today, in his mid-80s. Unfortunately, his wife passed away literally last year from a terrible road accident. Professor of Architecture and Town Planning, also a maverick, who's become one of Britain's great environmental gurus, to the extent that he didn't travel to his son's wedding in New York because he refused to get on a plane. He's written a lot about environment, about cycling. He lives in Hampstead. He's not so much connected to the Jewish world or the Jewish community, but if you go into his house, he has original Hillman paintings on the wall, including a portrait of Hillman's brother-in-law, Rabbi Herzog, in the 1930s, an original portrait. And I mentioned this a few times to your father, and he always says, how do I get hold of that portrait? We'll have to work on it in the future. The Hillman brothers, Mickey told me, when I mentioned some time ago, he said, you know, it's very famous that Diane Hillman he fell out with his son over the arms. And we got we also suffered from that because our father, David Hillman, wanted us to bring us back into religion, and we weren't into religion, at least two of us. So what we used to do was this, he said, there was a famous thing we used to do every week. We lived in Priory Road, and my father, David Hillman, went to the St. John's Wood Synagogue, the old one, in Abbey Road, the Louis J. New London Synagogue. And we said, we want to go and pray with our friends at the Hampstead Synagogue in Dennington Park Road. He said, okay, so long as you're going to shul, that's fine. And we used to go along to Dennington Park Road, spend the first 10 minutes there to make sure that all our dad's friends saw that we were there, so they could report back to him, and then we went off to Hampstead Heath to play cricket. That was they say that was partly to do with this. So that's the structure, the context of who we work with, who we live with, and I think that's very important. So where are the windows? Number of great books about synagogues in England. I think there are three which need to be mentioned. There's Sharman Cuddish's real monumental work on the synagogues of Britain and Ireland, where there are 2 or 3 pages about the Hillman windows. They're about synagogues all over Britain. They're the pages that were written about Hillman. They're a bit hard to see. And then these 2 books, Lost Synagogues and the Synagogues of London. This is less well known. Not many people know about this book. It's actually a more serious book than Lost Synagogues. This is a great coffee table book. When my parents, unfortunately, passed away over the last 10 years here in Yerushalayim, my father passed away in 2010. I just recently acquired this book, and I put it on the coffee table. And in terms of the people of his generation, a bit younger, who came to the Shiva, this was the topic of conversation during the week of the Shiva. It's a fascinating book about Lost Synagogues of London. There's a woman called Rachel Kolsky today who goes around taking Jewish tours of London, and she and I want to do a second version of this book. In the 25 years since this book was brought out, many other London shuls have closed down as communities have moved on. Very few now have been knocked down because of heritage laws, which was not the case back in the 50s and 60s. Many are now mosques or evangelical churches. Religious organisations always like taking over religious buildings because you don't have to apply for special planning permission. And then the neighbours can't protest that there are going to be lots of cars and lots of people coming. So, for instance, the Shackle Lane Shul is a mosque. The Hammersmith Synagogue in Brook Green is an evangelical church. The Hackney Synagogue is turning into an evangelical church. But if you go in, you can always see that these were synagogues and shuls at one time, except for the guy when I stuck my head in the Hechal Lane, now mosque, which is not such a radical mosque, it's a Turkish mosque, and the guy let me in and look around and take some pictures, which is very rare, you have to watch where you go. And I said to this young 18-year-old, I said, this is a very nice mosque. How long has it been? I said, has it been a mosque for very long? He said, at least 100 years. So I didn't bother to get into a discussion with him. The windows are mostly located in London. They're mostly to be found in London. As I say, St John's Wood has the largest collection. I'm going to come back to St John's Wood in a minute, because the story there is in itself interesting, how some were transferred from the original St John's Wood shul in Abbey Road, and others were then added on by Hillman at a later date, because the shul is much larger. Today St John's Wood are trying to think, how do we downsize? The old shul in Abbey Road was just the right size for us. Today, too late, it's gone somewhere else. Egerton Road, which was of course the transfer of the new synagogue in East End, beautiful shul taken over by Bob Hasidim. I think of 3 synagogues in that area. I grew up as a young kid in the Stoke Newington area. We lived on top of the Dalston Synagogue, the Poets Road shul, which when it shut down was knocked down. Hechal Lane 10 years later became a mosque. Egerton Road, which is in the heart of the biggest Haredi community in Europe, 3rd largest in the world after Israel and North America. Today we're about 35,000. In the Stanford area and growing exponentially like the Haredi population everywhere in the world, was taken over by Bob Hasidim. One of the 2 Bob Rebbes, I'm not sure which one, put about £1 million into doing it up. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's now a base medrash rather than an old synagogue. They took out certain bath furniture, but they're very limited by heritage laws. So despite that, you go in there, at least men can go in there, women it's a bit more difficult. And there are hundreds of people in black hats, long beards and coats like the Meir Sharim, learning there and davening there, and yet in the shul you still have the marble plaques for prayer for the royal family. I think you may even have one for the Seder. I don't think they're allowed to touch it. You have the Hillman windows, which were early Hillman windows. They didn't want the windows, because stained glass isn't exactly what you expect in a Hasidic shtibel, whether it's a big shtibel or a small shtibel. But they were told, if you want this building, you have to keep the windows. And then some people came along, and I've also been there once or twice and met people and told them about the windows, and they realised that these are very Jewish windows, they don't have a problem with them, they don't have faces on them, which in other places they do. They have another window in the Egerton Road shul, if those of you who know the shul, at the front, a beautiful large window, which was only put in the 60s, which, Rahman al-Islam, is a window in honour of the State of Israel. Now, with that one, they had a problem. But they couldn't touch it because of heritage laws. So you would see it from the outside, but when you went inside, you didn't know there was a window because it was covered by a big wooden wood slate. I was there 6 months ago, and I was looking around. I said, hey, they've taken the wood away. You can see the window from inside. So I immediately went up to one of the people. I said, what's happened? What's going on here? You suddenly became great Zionists and supporters. They said, look carefully at the window. And he gave me one of those grins that they say, chiyuch mamzeri. And I realised that what they'd done, they obviously hadn't asked permission. They'd just replaced 2 panes in the window, the ones that had the semel of Medinat Israel, they'd replaced it with something else. So the window was there, and unless you're really aware of what was in the window, you wouldn't be afraid. I asked them also about the plaque of the royal family. I said, doesn't it? It's a bit funny for you to say, no, we're Kvod HaMalchut, Hakarat HaTov, we live in a Malchut Shel Chesed, and we don't have a problem, we wouldn't put it up, but it's no problem saying that. And the same guy said to me, but we have been thinking of where the name of the king and queen is, of replacing it with the name of the Bob of Areva. But apart from that, the plaque remains there as it is. Hampshire Garden suburb has a complete set of his windows. The central, Great Portland Street, Hallam Road has a complete set. It was known as Sir Isaac's. It was where he lived, where he prayed, where he put the money into it, into rebuilding it after it was very badly damaged during World War II. So there's a nice set of Hillman windows there. There are a number of shuls that have closed down with Hillman windows which are being transferred to other shuls. So for instance, Cricklewood, which was one of the first shuls to get the windows, again, that was Louis Rabinowitz's first or second position in the 30s. Again, it could be the connection that brought the windows to there when the shul was built. When it closed down about 10 or 12 years ago, the windows were transferred, most of them, to the reinvigorated Brondesbury shul, which used to be the Wilson Synagogue, and they have them there, and a few were transferred to Hendon Riley Close, and there's an archivist at the United Synagogue, by the name of Charles Tucker, who knows all the secrets, but won't tell you any of them. But he told me that, he said there was such and such a number of windows in Cricklewood Synagogue, such and such went to Brondesbury, 2 went to Hendon, that leaves 3 that went for a walk somewhere. So there are 3 people who were involved in the closing of Cricklewood Synagogue who have nice little Hillman windows in their basements or their homes somewhere. There's one that was on the very opening slide, this lecture, it came from originally from the Bayswater Synagogue. I'm not quite sure where they went to. It's one of my jobs to try and find out. But one of the beautiful windows in Bayswater Synagogue is somehow got transferred to Ely Cathedral, where there's a stained glass window museum, and so one of Hillman's windows is in Ely Cathedral. The Marble Arch has in its lobby, not in the shul itself, a set of 8 or 10 windows, which were transferred from the Western Shul in Fulford Place when they closed down. Hampstead in Dennington Park Road has 2 of its very, very early windows. I didn't know about those until a few years ago. I spoke to Louise Hillman, who had been David Hillman's daughter-in-law, Ellis's Hillman's wife, and she told me that there were 2 windows, very early windows of his in Dennington Park Road. If any of you have been to London, were members of Dennington Park Road, you know they've poured also £1 million into the most beautiful renovation of one of the most beautiful schools left in London. The only problem is that no one goes there on Shabbat morning. Although there are a lot of Jews in Hampstead and a lot of synagogues operating. So this is a bit too formal, but it's absolutely one of the most beautiful schools, together with the new West End and the very smart, which are probably left in London today. So you can see there are a lot of windows here. A lot of windows. Outside of London, there's some in Leeds. They've also been transferred from one shul to another. Terranure in Dublin, there's some. I've got a picture of the Terranure ones later. St Albans, there are 2 windows. Bet Knesset Hanasim, Rehovot Zishkintown, have 2 small windows, the same ones with birds as the ones that are in St Albans. Renanim, as I say, afterwards go and look at them from the outside. I'll tell the caretaker to leave the lights on for 10 minutes. This set here, and it's very possible there's some others which I haven't come across yet. I think really someone needs to register them from 1 to whatever number they are to know exactly how many there were. It's an amazing collection, given the fact that he did it mostly by himself with 1 person. It's an amazing collection. Even if a lot of the patterns tend to repeat themselves, it still is an amazing lifetime work. And this is Bet Knesset Nasi Yerushalayim, which are very similar to the ones in St Albans, the same 2 virtually. Let's say something about St John's Wood, where I go very often. I see a huge amount. Huge synagogue, 1,400 seats. They have on both sides of the shul, downstairs and upstairs. On each side downstairs, they have 5 sets of 5. Long and short. So you've got 5 times 5 is 25. 25 smaller ones at the top. That's 50 on each side, just downstairs. Plus a whole load at the top, which were the ones that were completed after he died in the early 70s. The story of St John's Wood is very interesting. The windows were originally moved from, let's see if I can, this is the upstairs of St John's Wood. On a Shabbat morning it always looks empty there. You go into the Tony Page Kiddush afterwards, it looks absolutely packed full. Even if you have 250 people sitting in that synagogue, it looks empty. Even if you have 250 people sitting in that synagogue, it looks empty. You go into a synagogue, and St John's Wood is not a poor community, but they all wait for these kiddushim. I, as a person being on sabbatical, half the time there by myself, it's my mainstay. This is the central synagogue, as I said, Sir Isaac's, where you can take pictures, but I can actually send this PowerPoint to anyone who's interested. It's not something private. This is the Egerton Road. You can imagine what Hasidim think about those windows. You can see the much earlier windows. We'll get to pictures of the windows in the last section in a minute. This is the Bronzebury Park ones, which we moved from Cricklewood. They're lit up, but they're not actually windows anymore. They're actually against the wall, but they're lit up, and they look really beautiful when they're lit up there. So they were only transferred 10 years ago. So modern techniques were used to box them, to cage them, and to put good fluorescent lights behind them. Problem with St John's Wood windows, there's so many, they're not lit up. And St John's Wood Synagogue is enclosed by many other buildings. So it's very hard to get the best out of them. And I know there are people there who would very much like to find a donor to put lighting in to light up these windows so you can see the full beauty of them. In Bronzebury it says these were designed by David Hillman, were donated by John, originally installed at Cricklewood Synagogue between 31 and 57, and following the closure of Walm Lane in February 2005, they were transferred to the Bronzebury Synagogue, which is undergoing a renaissance and a renovation today. St Albans, you can see the bottom three are nothing to do with them. The top two are very similar, if not exactly the same as the ones in Bet Knesset Hamasi here in Bechod Zishkin. And I love this picture. Because anyway, all of you who know Jewish politics from Anglo-Jewish politics, comes from this book. It's just a great picture because on two pages next to each other, you have the New London Synagogue, Abbey Road, and St John's Wood Synagogue, face to face, looking at each other, and all of you know the significance of that in Anglo-Jewish religious and political history, will know what I mean. But in Abbey Road, which in my view is a much more beautiful shul than New St John's Wood, it's smaller, it's older, it's more beautiful, they had altogether 10 times 3. I think the most they had 30 windows. When they were transferred to the New St John's Wood, many years later, Hillman was then asked to complete each set of 3 to a set of 5, and to do the top ones. And although, as I say, I'm no expert in art, if you know about this, you come and you look at the 5. I'll come back to that in a minute. You look at a set of 5, for instance. Each one is a set of 5 like this. You can see both in terms they're much lighter windows to the outside ones you did later, and there are interesting additions such as people, which I'll come back to in a minute. Each set of 5 is around a particular festival. So he did these, you can see from the dates on them, that they were done 25 to 35 years later, and some he had done the design, or they were repetitions of his older designs, and they were then made at a later date. So, in the St John's Wood Synagogue, if you go upstairs, there's a little exhibition on the wall about his windows, a general exhibition and a description of 2 or 3 of them. Letter and receipt. In 1962 or 52, received 52. I had pleasure in enclosing receipt for the 3 stained glass windows. He did them, David Hillman. He received £400 for 3 of these massive windows. It was interesting. He did all these windows, and I can tell you, I mean, he was never a rich person. I mean, he obviously did not make a great living out of being the sole stained glass window manufacturer, but they were the sort of money, and people like Isaac Wilson were his patrons, and they made sure that he always had windows to make. And here are nice pictures of the consecration on the left. On the right, we're in Abbey Road, not very clear now, and the right in 1954, and on the left were as late as the 1980s in the New St John's Wood Synagogue. They were being consecrated the whole time. On the right, I'm sorry this picture isn't very clear, I can send it to you. You have Chief Rabbi of Israel, and behind him stands a much older David Hillman with a top hat. If you look at the picture on the left at the very back, you can see Rabbi Cyril Harris, who was then the Rabbi of St John's Wood, basically the Chief Rabbi of South Africa. Just a year ago, some woman who's the expert of stained glass windows in England brought out a book that's about the 100 best stained glass sites in London. 4 of them are synagogues, and one of them is the St John's Wood, where she has a very good analysis and description. I don't know where she got the information from. There's a very accurate description of Hillman, his family, and the background. Let's just go for a third section and look at some of the windows themselves. As I say here, I rely on people who are more expert in art than I, but they're mostly focused on the pictures I've taken, not very good pictures as you can see. They really need a professional photographer to now take them. of the pictures I've taken of the sets in St. John's Wood. So downstairs, as I say, you have 10 sets of 5 on each side, and each one is around a particular festival theme, all 5. So you've got one for Sukkot. Well, we'll go through them, we'll see. Here is the set for Sukkot. So the 3 internal ones would have come from Abbey Road. The 2 external ones were added on at a much later date. You can see he did a central one, and then he always did a pair on each side. So the 2 immediate to the right and left of the center are the same, and the far out to the side. But what is amazing about the Hillman windows are the quotations, the text. His knowledge of Torah, Talmud, Agadah, everything. I mean, the texts that come out there from prayer, from tefillah, from everywhere are just amazing. Always different texts, different quotations, which showed his knowledge. And as Rabbi Herzog said, you could say a sentence there and he could recite the whole passage just like that by heart. So I'll just go through a few of them. This is, I've got photos just of the centre one. It's the centre one which repeats itself because it's so exceptional, St. John's Wood. If you go to the other shuls, like here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 3 at the back. He's usually got anything between 8 to 12, each one about a certain festival, and the themes tend to repeat themselves. Fair enough. What is that one? Is Purim? Have we got a Purim here somewhere? We'll find one in a minute. You can see the Hanuka one at the back. So you can see the Purim one is around the table, the Megillah at the top, and the quotations he takes in Mishnah, Manot Re'eu, or Matanot Le'evyonim, and this is the window where it appears by itself from another shul, as you can see basically the same theme coming through the central window there with the same quotations. That's Purim. This is Rosh Hashanah, where he has Kavacharat Roy Adorn. He has a picture of the sheep following the shepherd, like we say in the Hanuka Musa. And he has someone blowing the shofar. Hidden face, I'm going to say something about the face in a minute, blowing the shofar at the top. That's the classic Rosh Hashanah image that he has in most of his windows there. We go to Yom Kippur. I can see his Yom Kippur one right here is exactly the same. If you look right behind you, you'll see exactly the same window here. Yom Kippur. Or is that Rosh Hashanah? No, it's Rosh Hashanah. Not really somewhere around here. Yom Kippur, sorry, over there. So that's one of his classic pictures of Yom Kippur. And the Lakat Milah HaMaskar Gachalayesh, you have to know the wording of the Musaf Tfilah and the Avodah to know where that comes from. He uses that as part of the window there. And there is a different Yom Kippur one he uses in other synagogues. Tachlan and Shah, open the gate for 8 Milat Shah, which we say in the prayer of Ilah, just before the end of Yom Kippur. That's the same window as the Yom Kippur one there that I can see. We come to Hanuka. That's the St. John's Wood one. Have a look at that window at the back there. You can see exactly the same window. That's exactly the same. Does it, you mean, that may be the case, but that's what he puts in his Hanukkah window. Okay? Why he does 7 and not 9? Okay, then you have to ask him, I don't know. But that is Hanukkah Lehodot Lahalel from Al-Hanisim. And you can see a much larger version of that in one of the other synagogues. Again, all alongside with Likun Neirot, the Patrot, the Chef, the Parush, Monat Hanukkah, you make Hanukkah Elul. So he has a quotation from everywhere. Pesach, he has a laid table. The Higadatan of the Bimcha, which you say at the Seder. Again, the same one going through there. Sukkot. I did see exactly the same Sukkot one, and I'm definitely sure I saw it just now. Here, it's this one here. That's the classic Sukkot one. The door of the Sukkah open, and you have a quotation about when you collect the produce from the fields at the time. That is one of his classic Sukkot windows. I'm sorry to focus on good, but as I say, we need professional photographers to do it. I managed to get them in a better version from a different synagogue. And that's his classic Sukkot picture, what does it say around the side? I can't read it from here. But it's quotation, and remember, all 5 windows he has different quotations and different texts. Shavuot, Shalosh Regalim Tachov B'Shana, with a picture of what he assumed was the Beit HaMikdash. I don't have another Rosh Chodesh. That Rosh Chodesh is similar, yeah. It's exactly the same as the one behind you in the Rosh Chodesh. One to do more with Korbanot, Torah, and so on. And Shabbat, of course, is a favourite theme of his, where again you have, if you notice in Pesach and Purim and Shabbat, they have very similar sort of laid tables there. Good Jewish tradition, lots of food, plenty to eat. If you can't think of anything else to put in your window, put in some good, chalot and chulans and whatever else, and the candlesticks, of course. And he has a number of quotations there by Kuash and Amaraz at the top, Eshet Chayim inside the bottom, and again quotations all around. In St. John's Wood is the only place I've come across, unless that one there is similar. I can't see, no, I'm not sure what that one there is. But because he had to do so many, he had to think of new things. So he had one of the Messianic era, of Acharit Hayamim. You don't find that in his other windows. And he has the Egel of Filming, and the idea, you can see a better picture of this version, where all the animals, the lions and the sheep are together in a world of harmony, a world of peace, a world of stability. Well, we all know about that one, don't we? And just interestingly, I was in Terranure 2 or 3 years ago, where some of Elaine, my wife's family, come from, and I realised, I didn't know that previously, I realised looking at there were some Hillman windows there, early Hillman windows. Herzog had been Chief Rabbi in Dublin. He was already related to Hillman at that time, so that must have been the reason. And they have these 3 windows together, Shavuot, Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat, and if you look carefully at the themes, you can see they are early developments of exactly the same things you saw in the St. John's Wood windows. One interesting thing about his windows is the issue of the faces. You know that it's not accepted in Orthodox synagogues to have people. It's pesel. You don't have people in them. In a number of occasions, you may have the backs of people, but even there, it's not so accepted. In some of his earlier windows, he has people half hidden, either their back or covered by a talit. Interestingly enough, in his latest windows, in an Orthodox window, the one he had in St. John's Wood, he has full facials. And that's exceptional. I don't think you'll find that in hardly any other Orthodox school. According to what Sharon Kaddish writes in her book, she says that Ellis Hillman told her that he got the heter for this from his brother-in-law, Chief Rabbi Herzog. That's the story. These people are all dead. Myths are myths, stories are stories. But they have no problem. They have no problem with that. I would have thought if Bob or in Egerton Road and have windows like then they would have had a real problem with it. I mean, out of 110, there may be 5 or 6 windows like that. And actually, the one to the right, where the 2 are reading in with Eli, I think, is literally the one behind where I sit in St. John's Wood. And I find it one of the most interesting windows. But it's very rare to have full faces, and they were very much part of the last part of his windows. He, apart from the Chagim, he does have other things. You see a lot of them at the top of St. John's Wood Synagogue. Louise Hillman told me that she was responsible for getting them done after he died, and then they were less to do with festival topics. They had to find other topics. They looked for biblical flowers, biblical birds, biblical musical instruments. Less text, although there are some there. So you'll see a whole range at the top. Some are with flowers, some are with birds, including by the ones I showed before, St. Albans and the Knesset Hanasi. They have birds. Normally biblical birds, and a lot of biblical musical instruments you'll find in some of those later windows, or tucked into the Chagim, but not as the major component. David Hillman passed away in the early 1970s. Together with his wife Annie Hillman, he's buried in Bushy Cemetery. Bushy today is actually one of the most vibrant living communities. When we grew up as kids, we only knew it as a place you went to for the wrong reasons. But it's still a massive cemetery. David Hillman and his wife are buried in Bushy Cemetery. A remarkable person who clearly left a lifetime work, the sort of thing, you would say in Israel, on Yom Ha'atzmaut, when you give Pras Yisrael for someone who had a lifetime achievement, his achievement are these hundreds of windows which decorate synagogues around the world. Thank you.
Going to begin our treasurer, will now give Chief Rabbi of Israel.
Good evening. First of all, you're witnessing it first time I ever talked in Hechal Shlomo. Not sure it'll be happening again. I'm very sorry we couldn't see the windows in all their glory. I tried to pull rank as treasurer of the Jewish History Society with the authorities upstairs, but it didn't work. So I tried to have the sunset delayed like, sure, but for now, next time. I found David's talk about his family and his family tree, which is actually more like a family forest, fascinating. And for me, as a surprise when I came in here this evening, it was a surprise because I've met David and